Once upon a time, in a distant kingdom, there was a grand and beautiful palace. In this splendid palace lived a gracious and kind queen. Her only dream was to become a mother to a beautiful daughter. She longed for a child whose very presence would fill her heart with joy. One winter day, the queen sat by her window, gazing out at the snow-covered landscape as delicate snowflakes danced in the cold air. She was sewing, her thoughts drifting, and her eyes fixed on the winter scene. Suddenly, her needle pricked her finger, causing a single drop of blood to fall on the fresh snow. As she watched the red against the white, she whispered a heartfelt wish. "I wish for a daughter with skin as white as snow, lips as red as blood, and a heart full of love and kindness." As if by magic, the queen's wish was granted, and soon she gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. She named her Snow White. Snow White's hair was as black as coal, her skin as white as snow, and her lips as red as roses. She had a gentle soul and a heart full of love. The queen cherished her daughter dearly, but unfortunately, their happiness was brief. The queen fell ill not long after Snow White's birth and passed away, leaving the king and his beloved daughter in deep sorrow. In time, the king remarried. The new queen was stunning, yet behind her beauty hid a heart filled with jealousy and vanity. She was obsessed with her own beauty, possessing a magical mirror she consulted every day. She would stand before it, asking, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" To this, the mirror would always respond, "You are my queen." Reassured, the queen would go about her day, satisfied that no one could rival her beauty. But as Snow White grew, she became more beautiful with each passing year. Her kind spirit and gentle nature made her even lovelier in the eyes of everyone around her. When she was old enough, her beauty surpassed even that of the queen. One morning, as usual, the queen asked, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" This time, however, the mirror hesitated before replying, "My queen, you are beautiful, but Snow White is the fairest in the land." The queen was enraged. How could anyone, especially Snow White, be more beautiful than she? Her jealousy consumed her, and she decided that Snow White must be removed. Summoning a loyal huntsman, she commanded him to take Snow White deep into the forest and kill her. As proof, he was to bring back her heart. The huntsman, however, had always been fond of Snow White. He knew she was kind and innocent, and he couldn't bring himself to harm her. Once they were deep in the forest, he confessed the queen's orders to Snow White and urged her to flee and never return. Grateful and frightened, Snow White ran deeper into the forest. Lost and frightened, Snow White wandered through the dense woods, unsure of where to go. Eventually, she came across a small, charming cottage hidden among the trees. Exhausted, she knocked on the door, but no one answered. Finding it unlocked, she stepped inside. The cottage was incredibly tiny, with small chairs, little dishes, and even tiny beds. Everything was beautifully crafted yet scattered in disarray. Snow White, unable to resist, began to tidy up. She washed 7 little plates, 7 tiny cups, and arranged 7 small beds, making the place cozy and clean. Afterward, she cooked herself a small meal and, feeling very tired, lay down across the little beds and fell into a deep sleep. Later that evening, the cottage's true owners, the 7 dwarfs, returned from their work in the mines, singing as they approached. Upon entering, they were astonished to find their home spotless and filled with the smell of a delicious meal. Confused, they searched the cottage and found Snow White asleep on their beds. Bewildered by the beauty of this mysterious guest, the dwarfs gently woke her. Snow White, startled at first, quickly explained her story, telling them about the wicked queen and how she had come to the forest to escape. The dwarfs, touched by her tale, introduced themselves as Doc, Happy, Grumpy, Dopey, bashful, sneezy, and sleepy. They offered her a place to stay, and Snow White gratefully accepted, promising to keep their house tidy and cook meals for them in return. For a while, Snow White lived peacefully with the dwarfs. Each morning, they would go off to work in the mines, leaving her behind. Before leaving, they would caution her to be cautious and never open the door to strangers. But back at the palace, the queen still believed Snow White was dead. One morning, she asked her mirror the same question, expecting her usual reply. To her horror, the mirror revealed that Snow White was alive, living with the 7 dwarfs. Furious, the queen devised a plan to take matters into her own hands. Disguising herself as an old woman, the queen traveled to the dwarf's cottage with a poisoned apple. She knocked on the door, and Snow White, seeing an old harmless-looking woman, took pity on her and invited her inside. The disguised queen offered Snow White a beautiful red apple, enticing her to take a bite. The moment Snow White bit into it, she fell to the ground, under the curse of a death-like sleep. When the dwarfs returned that evening, they found Snow White lifeless on the floor. They tried everything to revive her, but to no avail. Heartbroken, they laid her in a crystal coffin and placed it in the forest, where they could always watch over her. Days passed, and the dwarfs visited her daily, leaving flowers beside her. Snow White, though under a deep sleep, looked as if she were simply resting, her beauty undimmed. One day a prince passing through the forest saw the crystal coffin and the beautiful maiden inside. Struck by her beauty, he felt an overwhelming desire to kiss her. As he did so, Snow White's eyes fluttered open and she awoke from her slumber. The dwarfs and forest creatures rejoiced, thrilled to see her alive again. News of Snow White's awakening spread, and the king, upon learning that his daughter was safe, welcomed her back to the palace with open arms. The wicked queen, now revealed for her evil deeds, was banished from the kingdom forever. Snow White and the prince were married in a grand celebration that lasted 40 days and 40 nights. The entire kingdom joined in the joyous event, and Snow White, the prince, the dwarfs and her father lived happily ever after, surrounded by love and laughter.